I'm Manuel Perez Rocha from the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, D.C., and I'm here in Brussels to attend the first strategy meeting on the Transatlantic and Trade and Investment Partnership, the TTIP, between the European Union and the United States. The governments of the US and the EU are negotiating this trade agreement behind doors, and it's very important that we know what is happening here.
DG Trade, for many years, they're not only fighting for European industry. This is really an institution, a state apparatus that fights for transnational capital. They've always done that, and they were very active in encouraging EU industry to team up with their US counterparts when they put forward their first position papers on TTIP. So this is really an agent of transnational capital.
Business groups and the governments are trying hard to convince us that the TTIP is good for job creation, for the environment, and for people in general.
A year and a half ago, we were not even sure the place had a door, and now we are entering the negotiating room together. It's a sign of the strong political will on both sides. It shows the political will to work together with our long-standing and most trusted partner on the essential objective for governments on either side of the Atlantic: growth, jobs, and prosperity. Together, Europe and the United States are the backbone of the world economy. Opening up that space further for opportunities for business and consumers is simply common sense. And that's why we are impatient to start, although we know that negotiations won't be a smooth ride. Obviously, there are and will be sensitive issues on each side. With flexibility, open-mindedness, and some creativity, the greatest asset for negotiators and statesmen, I'm confident we will find solutions. There is too much at stake. The launch of our negotiations, therefore, stands for our continued common commitment to engage with each other in order to engage with the world. The EU and its member states are ready to engage and look forward to the new trade landscape we will shape together.
However, despite the rhetoric of the negotiators, the TTIP would have huge implications in many aspects of our lives, from food sovereignty to digital rights to privileges given to investors, to the environment, labor rights, and indeed for the rest of the world.
The reason we're most concerned about TTIP is its potential to undermine the progress in rebuilding local food systems, both in the United States and in Europe. In the US, we have all this amazing activity on the ground where people are trying to produce without GMOs, produce food that's healthier, building programs where they sell directly in local markets, or they farm-to-school programs that get healthy, locally grown foods into schools. And we're concerned that specifically the procurement commitments in TTIP could undermine that. We also work with groups trying to label GMOs, for example, or get toxics out of the food system. There are active campaigns all across the country trying to do that at the state level, and many of those people look to Europe for inspiration. They see the kinds of laws in Europe, they know about the use of the precautionary principle, they know about REACH on chemical reform, and see that aspire to that kind of system. And so those people too are angry about what this could mean. So we're still in this initial phase of trying to help people understand what the impacts could be, but there's a lot of new energy around it.
Well, the biggest US online companies, Google, Facebook, Yahoo, see the transatlantic partnership, TTIP, as a way to expand all the data that they collect on citizens and consumers all over the world, including in the EU. So the TTIP threatens to unleash greater commercial surveillance of citizens in the EU. It will provide a new mechanism for the NSA and other intelligence agencies to gain information about what we do and to make actions about that information. And it will further place the internet under the control of the most powerful corporations.
Their concern is about access to knowledge, access to content, which concerns the copyright. There is the fear that TTIP might become like ACTA, the Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement, and internet service providers might actually have to block access to content simply because the content industry, right holders, the music industry, or the Hollywood studios might ask them to do so because they might think that consumers are infringing copyright by downloading movies for their personal use.
TTIP would remove the ability of governments and communities to put in place policies that protect our climate. And one example is the EU, for example, has a new proposal that will actually expand trade in dangerous fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas from the US to the European Union, while actually restricting the ability of governments and communities to put in place clean energy programs. The EU is looking to import more fracked gas from the United States. As you may know, fracking is the incredibly dangerous process of drilling deep into the ground, injecting millions of gallons of water, undisclosed chemicals, sand in the ground in order to crack shale rock and release natural gas. And it's a process that has incredible health implications and implications for our global climate. Another serious implication of the agreement would be to empower corporations to challenge environment and climate policies. So one of the chapters of TTIP is likely to be on investment. And what this would do is give foreign corporations the right to directly challenge and actually essentially sue governments over laws and policies that are designed to protect our environment and climate. And because I was just talking a little bit about fracking, just to give one example of a case that's now ongoing that could be sort of replicated and expanded in TTIP, that I'd mention the case of Lone Pine Resources, which is a US energy firm that is now suing Canada under NAFTA's investment chapter for $250 million for one reason, and that is because the government of Quebec put in place a simple time-out or moratorium on fracking in order to understand the environmental implications of fracking for oil and gas underneath the St. Lawrence River.
This is not the first trade and investment agreement. There is a famous example of this kind of trade agreements, which is NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which was concluded in 1994. And the conclusions about NAFTA is that it was very bad for the workers in the United States, but in the other countries too. NAFTA has also weakened the labor standards in the United States and in Mexico. In fact, it's creating strengthened competition between the countries. It raises the profits of big companies, but it doesn't improve the living and working conditions of workers.
Our focus currently is on the investor-state arbitration system. It's going to be part of the TTIP, the EU-US agreement, probably also of the CETA agreement. And we think it's a very dangerous, in fact scandalous, system that is being set up on behalf of global capital, of corporations, of international investors that want to attack public policies. The investor-state dispute settlement system is dangerous for public policies, for democracy, and even for national and European legal systems, because it gives corporations an extra tool to attack our democratic political decisions, court decisions, administrative practices, in a private system of tribunals that make binding decisions. These tribunals are run by arbitration lawyers that make a lot of money, so this is a business for the arbitration industry, and they decide over issues like health, like environmental, like finance or economic policy regulations. And we think it's totally misplaced to give private corporations this power to attack public regulations. It's also scandalous that this is all happening in secrecy. And it's highly questionable that this system where an arbitration industry developed to make a lot of money out of this can really undermine democratically developed sovereign decisions.
We find that we're in a specific moment, strategic moment, where first there has been a negotiation between Canada and the EU. There's an agreement in principle, which just goes deeper into what we call the corporate-led model that puts the investors' rights before the people's rights, but also the investors' rights, both and their power, both at the economic and political level. So there is like sort of a coup, right, that we're confronting, that we need to mingle up our social movements and try to confront the system at this specific venture.
If the TTIP will not bring economic, social, or environmental justice, it is then urgent to stop it. We have stopped this type of agreements before. It depends on us.